my wife and I started our family young. So there's like a lot of reasons why we decided to, get married and start a family young. One of them is, we're Christians, and so we believe that sex is meant to be in a long-term married, committed, covenant relationship. So when you're dating and you're madly in love and you're having a hard time keeping your hands off each other, it makes sense to say, well, if this is where we're going to go, let's get married. So I mean, now like the rest of the world looks at that and they're like, I don't understand that. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to. It works for us.
Hmm.
And it wasn't like repressive or anything like that. It's just a matter of like sexuality is great and it's supposed to be for a married couple.
What was that like, having almost adult kids and then going through that? Because that's something. It's kind of like a future fear I've had of like, oh, I better have my stuff together when my kids can actually really consciously observe me and maybe criticize me in their heads or maybe out of their heads.
So I have a theory, and somebody told me this once, and I have kind of lived by it. And I always told my kids this when they were little, and they didn't get it, and then now they get it. This is my parenting advice in a nutshell. You're going to do the best you can do. You need to do the best you can do. Try hard to raise them well, teach them what they need to know, model the things you need to model, and let therapy sort them out later. Because you're going to screw it up. You tell that to some people and they get really mad because like they've invested their whole life into being a parent. My last daughter just graduated. This is such a big year for us, dude. My last daughter graduated high school. And like my wife was ordained this year as, which means she went through all of her ministry classes, and it's our 25th wedding anniversary. And then I'm starting a brand new job, starting a new career. And so like the whole world is like crazy this year. There's so many things, but like, life is always change. Like there's always going to be change. There's always going to be shifts. There's always going to be things that move around. And I think the best you can do sometimes is just you roll with it. I mean, I do believe, yes, you need to live life on purpose. You need to try to make life happen. You need to take the reins, but like, there's a lot of things that happen in your life that you can't control. Other people's decisions you can't control. Your kids' decisions, you can raise them, you can teach them, you can try your best to model for them, but they're going to make their own decisions and they're going to make some really stupid ones. And even if you're doing the absolute best you can, you also are flawed and you will make mistakes and your family will pay for it. Now, I don't say that to discourage you. The goal is that if we embrace it, if we all just admit the fact that I'm going to mess it up, there's always some kind of plan B. There's always some kind of way to redeem the brokenness of the situation. And I think that's the beauty of life, is that even if it's the worst possible scenario, right, it'll work out.
Again, parenting is the topic that I think about a lot now, just because of my life situation. Of like, it's such a unidirectional relationship, and maybe that changes when they get older. But it's like, I can't put any responsibility on her. Like, no, I'm fully responsible for her, not the other way around. And it's like when you see yourself in that position, well, like the buck stops with you. It's stops with you. Like you actually can't blame anyone and be self-respecting at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's like if your kid goes out and is playing baseball in the backyard and breaks the neighbor's window, who pays for the window? you know, you pay for the window, Dad. That's how that works. And so there's always that degree of ownership, especially with your kids, that you will always have. You know what I mean? And then there's adulthood that comes along, and even adolescence, but especially adulthood, where like right now, like everything your child does, you have the opportunity to correct if it's wrong. Like, don't touch that stove, it's hot. Don't drink so much milk, you're going to make yourself sick. Or don't drink too much water before bed, or you're going to pee the bed. That's coming in the couple years that are coming up, right? But like as they get older, you're giving them more and more agency and more ability to make the choices. And helicopter parenting, where you just make all of the choices for her and just protect her from everything, is not going to work. Like, then she will never know how to make choices. So there's going to be times when, like, don't climb on top of that that ladder, you're going to fall down. Sometimes she has to fall down and get bruised to learn that you don't do that. And then as they get older, those mistakes have more gravity, and those mistakes, you still have to have bumpers. It's like, when you ever go bowling and you, like, I'm really bad at bowling. So like
Yeah, me
I
too.
like to go bowling with kids. So they put the bumpers up because then I have a shot at knocking some pins down. And, you still have to have those bumpers up to a degree, but, kind of over time, they get less and less. And then when they're adults, like, yeah, you might still have to bail them out and help them out, but they have to feel the weight of their choices, and they're going to make some bad decisions. And it it is both a reflection on you, but also a reflection on them. And as, like, I guess it's like an eclipse, right? Or a lunar phase, when the moon like moves, and like it's, like, when it's a full moon, all of the light is on in the center, but then like it goes one way, and you start to see the gap on the other side. Like, that's parenting. Like, that shadow is moving across to the place where it's like more and more of the responsibility goes from you to them. And as they take more responsibility, you have less responsibility. So when your adult child gets in trouble with the law, or your adult child, racks up a bunch of debt, that's not your responsibility, but it does reflect on, you know what I mean? Like you can't help but to feel a little bit of responsibility, or, of like, man, I wish I would have taught them how to do this, you know? And so that happens. But at the same time, they are responsible for their choices, and they have to pay it. They have to own it. If
Has
you're
that
authentic.
stuff been talked out with your kids now that they're basically all grown?
Yeah, I have. So my son Abe and I were working out a couple times a week, um, and I've talked with all of my kids about it, but especially we've had a lot more conversations this past year or two. And I remember telling him, like, I told all of them, but I remember this with him, like, look, I'm really sorry for this and this and this, and he'll look at me and say, you know what, Dad, that means a lot. Thank you for sharing that. And um, I think he's been more receptive to it. But I have talked to all my kids about the things I've done wrong. I think, I don't know if I've done it enough with my one that just graduated. I think it's easier to do once they are adults than it is when
Yeah.
they're kids. But I know that, like, I didn't do it enough when they were younger. And so maybe it's time to take Shiloh out for some ice cream and have that conversation, and like, hey, look, but I have had that with some of them, and I've been trying to do it more, that I've started to realize, some of those breakdowns and weaknesses. And look, like, and I have said this too, like my kids did have it pretty good. Like, yeah, we were pretty broke most of the time financially, but for, like, we spent a lot of time together as a family. We did a lot of things together. We, we all have each other's backs, and we love each other. And so, we have a really good relationship in that regard, but I do see holes, right, in character, that if I look at it, I'm like, I know where that hole came from. And so that's the stuff that we're trying to iron out now.
Any last tips for a young father or would-be father? I think a lot of guys who listen to the podcast are probably around my age and maybe thinking about having a kid or in that
Mm-hmm.
transitional phase.
Well, let me speak to the guys thinking about it. First of all, if you wait until you're ready, you never will. Like when are you going to be ready? Like, what defines ready? Like, all it takes is, a willing mate, and then you're a dad. And, like, don't wait until you're ready. Just make yourself ready and do it, and you'll figure it out. And you can't mess them up too bad. You really can't. Like, kids are resilient. Like, there are kids out there that have been through a lot more trauma than you're ever possibly going to put your kid through. They're going to be okay. If you even care about the fact that you might traumatize them, that means you care enough to probably actually do what you need to do to raise them.